Hello and welcome to the Grassroots Coachcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dave.
And I'm Ben.
Today we're going to be talking about starting out as a grassroots coach, how we found it and the type of lessons we learned. In our retro review section, we'll be talking about a player who's been described by the National Football Museum as the most naturally gifted English player of his generation. Okay, so Ben, it's been a pretty mad last week since we launched the podcast.
It has, and I think from what we've seen, we've had some really good feedback. It's kind of mind-blowing to get so many downloads. It doesn't sound like many, but for me to get involved in doing this and have that many people show some interest is fantastic. And I think now we've got the Twitter page up as well. We're getting the message out there, and yeah, I'm really enjoying the interaction that we're getting with other coaches and that kind of thing. And we've had a few likes on the tweets from football players and supporters of other clubs. So yeah, hopefully we can keep spreading the word and keep sharing ideas and keep progressing it. So yeah, it's been all good. Really good first week.
Yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic. I mean, we didn't plan for a huge launch or anything like that, but some of the feedback's been surprisingly really positive, and people saying they like the concepts, like kind of how it started off, and looking forward to seeing how it goes. So that's been great. So thanks, Mum, Ben, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Money has changed hands.
Like you say, probably a few more downloads than we probably expected to, and so that's been brilliant.
Really have had any idea of what to expect, but yeah, to think there's sort of that many people have shown some interest in it's great, and just hopefully we can live up to the early hype and keep putting something out there that's interesting to people, and hopefully further down the line get other people involved and share their ideas and keep it going really.
Yeah. So if you do like what you hear, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button on iTunes or Stitcher there, and again, if you give us a 5-star review there, that helps other people find the podcast, or so I'm led to believe. So speaking of which, we do have our first 5-star review actually in that opening week. So I think it's so I believe the iTunes stores are quite regionalised. So this one is for the UK. I haven't checked other regions yet, but if we go ahead and have a look at that. So very interesting podcast between two friends about footy coaching of their children. Nice, short and sweet.
and so we haven't got 10 kids each.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more about the coaching than it is specifically about our kids. But
we will be doing an episode on that, coaching your own kids. I think there's plenty of stories we can share on that.
Yep, absolutely. So again, thank you for that. Again, we'll nominate our 5-star reviews as a Go Lazzo, and so we'll give that a shout out whenever we get one of those. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email us at grassrootscoachcast@gmail.com, so no spaces, no hyphens, grassrootscoachcast@gmail.com. You can also get us on Twitter at grootscoachcast, and go ahead and give us a follow. Let us know what you think. So it's been quite an interesting last week in the international game as well. Nice segue there with that, wasn't
it? Very good.
So, couple of international appointments. We obviously had Ryan Giggs for the Welsh men's football team, and Phil Neville taking over the England ladies football team, or the Lionesses. So let's discuss a little bit about Ryan Giggs, because Ben, you're actually a passionate Welsh fan, aren't you?
I am born and bred in Coventry. Yeah, all my family are Welsh, and I think me and my brother are the only people who are actually born in England in our family. But brought up in a very, my dad's actually more of a rugby guy, but I've been brought up in a very sort of partisan Welsh supporting house, and it's had a bit of a rub-off effect on me. So I do support Wales, and I do follow Wales over England if they play each other. I get plenty of stick about that, but yeah, I am a Welsh fan for my sins. So
So what do you think then about Giggs taking over?
um, I've got to be honest, I was a bit underwhelmed by it, to be honest. I think I wouldn't say it was a safe choice, but I think it was kind of an obvious choice. He's a big name, and obviously he played for Wales for many years. I think if you look at how many caps he got 60, mid 60s, I think, which is when we talked about Alan Hansen last week, how many caps he got for Scotland, and it's a similar thing with Giggs, albeit for different reasons. I think he should easily have had double that. Whether it was Alex Ferguson stopping him playing for friendlies or not, I don't know. But as a managerial appointment, he's had a brief stint at Man United, caretaker capacity. I don't know. I think it's just his. I find him his demeanour. I find a bit downbeat. He may not be like that in real life. He may be, very inspiring, and he likes to laugh and a joke and that sort of thing. But I don't know. I was just left a bit underwhelmed. But I personally would have liked Craig Bellamy to have got it,
Probably the
which is
opposite to
a
Giggs,
bit
isn't
more
he,
left field.
in
But
terms
I
of
think,
personality?
yeah, exactly. But I just love Craig Bellamy. He's a bit of a rogue, bit of a scallywag, and I think just his passion. I'd have loved to have seen him on the touchline as a manager for Wales, or we may in the future see him. I don't know. I know he's working at Cardiff under Neil Warnock in the development squad, and it would be nice to have him involved in the Wales setup. I think probably him and Giggs' personalities are a bit too different for that to happen, and he has come out and thrown his weight behind Giggs since he got the job. So, but yeah, I was a bit disappointed. But then I think if you look at the last few appointments, Chris Coleman, Gary Speed, even Mark Hughes, you know, Speed hadn't managed anybody, nor had Mark Hughes. Chris Coleman's stock was pretty low when he took the job. I think the main thing is it's a different job now. I think there's a lot of expectation now with Wales because of how they've done recently. They've got some real talented young players coming through. And as long as he can get the buy-in of those players and he can bring them through and develop them, and a couple of them get them capped as quickly as possible, Ampadu from Chelsea and David Brooks from Sheffield United, they're two real young talents. They could still play for England. They've played for Wales, but not in a competitive game. So it's important he gets them capped, and it's important he just gets the buy-in of what is a good young squad. And I think even if you look at Bale, Gunter, Allen, Ramsey, the sort of core part of that team, they're all still a good age, 27, 28. So they've got another good few years in them. And I just think as long as they look up to him, respect him, and buy into what he wants to do, then, good, and I'll get behind him. So it'll just be interesting to see if he continues to sort of approach Chris Coleman and Gary Speed to a point before that, or if we'll bring in a whole new raft of ideas, change the way they play. I don't know, but good luck to him. What do you think? Obviously, you're not Welsh. You don't support Wales. What do you think as
So
an English
I
supporter?
I kind of support. Right. So first and foremost, I support England on the international front, but I do look out for all the home nations results as well, and I think
Yeah, I do
I
as well.
do
Yeah.
like to see Wales win. I mean, when the footage came out with them furiously celebrating Iceland knocking England out, I left a little bit of a sour taste. But I still,
Yeah.
I can't shake that. It feels like an innate warming towards seeing how Wales do. And again, when I go back to being a kid, obviously Ian Rush was one of my heroes and played for Wales. And I just could not wrap my head around the fact that Wales didn't beat everyone because they had Ian Rush there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I guess,
Yeah.
it was a matter of time before Giggs picked up a job. Just about every job that's been going, he's
Yeah.
been linked to, hasn't he? But he's really absolutely great player, but pretty untested on the managerial front.
Yeah, I think if he got the job when Chris Coleman got it, there'd be a lot less pressure on him because obviously there were tragic circumstances that Chris Coleman got the job. But Welsh football was at a pretty. Gary Speed had sort of pulled it out the doldrums to a point, and he was making some real progression. But I think now the expectation is so high, and obviously we've just missed out on a World Cup, which is really disappointing. But after the Euros, people, see Wales as a bit of a scalp, and I think it would be interesting to see how he does. And this Nations League, they've got Denmark and is it Republic or Northern Ireland? I can't remember now, but it'd be interesting to see how he does in that. And obviously that's a route eventually into the Euros. It's an important albeit untried tournament, but he's got to hit the ground running straight away. And there's no, he hasn't got friendly games now to find his feet and find his team. He's got to know what the majority of the team he wants to play and how he wants to play. And let's see how he does.
I think that Euros performance and that team, people will be talking about that in 50, 70 odd years' time, won't they? It's the most successful Welsh team for a long time.
Yeah. And they surprised a lot of people, and people didn't know or expect how they would play. And now I think people have sussed them out a bit, and that's part of the challenge for Giggs. Can he find a slightly different way of playing and take it from there? Because they haven't got unlimited players to choose from, so you've got to kind of fit the formation and tactics around the players you have got. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But they have got some good young talent coming through. So yeah, hopefully he can nurture that.
No, good luck to him for sure. So it's slightly different appointments, and one that's got quite a bit of news is the Phil Neville taking over the English ladies.
Yeah, went under the radar, didn't it? Really.
So what are your thoughts on that one?
Well, it's funny. I was talking to my wife about it before. She wasn't very impressed because my daughter plays and they're quite into the ladies' football, and they go and watch Chelsea a bit, and they take a lot of interest in England. My daughter's a massive England fan. She wasn't too impressed, but I think her argument was, well, what's the route for female coaches if they see Phil Neville get the job? But a guy had that job before him. I don't know. It didn't really affect me in terms of did I think it was good, bad. I thought my view's always been if he's the right person for the job and they believe he's the right person for the job, then fair play. And it's the same if will it ever happen? It's unlikely, but if a female got the England men's football team job, I'd be totally behind them. If the FA thought that was the right person, great, and I want them to do well, even as a Wales fan, because I do kind of want England to do well sometimes. So yeah, I mean, it was a bit left field in terms of his managerial experience. He's had a bit of experience at Valencia as an assistant, but he's kind of unproven. And as for the Twitter stuff, I mean, my view on it was, well, whatever. People can put. I took it as tongue in cheek what he'd written in the past. I think that was my take on it. And you could dig out anything on anybody these days because of the way the media is and technology and social media. You could dig out a quote from 15, 20 years ago, probably on the internet, that somebody said and throw it back at them. But I think, again, if he gets the buy-in from the players and the respect and he takes it forward, then, good luck to him again. And I hope he does well because I think the way the England team has performed recently has opened up a whole new raft of girls being interested in football. And it's certainly, like I said, my wife and daughter go and watch ladies football, and I think they probably wouldn't have done that if they hadn't watched the England team recently.
Yeah.
So yeah, good. So I hope he does well.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to talking about this one, actually. I mean, the Twitter stuff, like you say, the problem is with digital information like that. You say something once and it's with you forever. Now, however he intended it, whatever, it's done now. It's in the past. But I think my thoughts on it are a bit more unstructured, and I think I can jump from one side of the fence to the other quite easily. Now, I think, as you'd mentioned about what your wife was saying there, so forget the fact that he'd said this stuff on Twitter. He's not been in and around the ladies' game, so you wouldn't think he would know it that well to start off with. He also hasn't been a particularly successful coach. Now, as a player, I think I probably rated him higher than most people. I I thought, a few times I saw him, particularly when he was when he moved into the middle of midfield. I liked the way he played. He was that destroyer in the middle.
You're right. Actually, you're right. I think he suffered, didn't he, from being quite versatile and played all over the place. But you're right. I think when he played for Everton as a central midfielder, he was pretty decent, actually.
Yeah, but as a coach, he's you could say he's possibly been a bit unlucky. He's never been that manager, the number one. He's sort of been the coach with like David Moyes, and then he went with Gary Neville off to Valencia. Didn't do particularly great things there. So from that perspective, I'm scratching my head a bit and wondering, well, where's the track record, and also what is the progression for other people who are working hard in the ladies' game?
Yeah, I think that's the key point, really.
But the other, if I flip across to the other side of the fence, he's a name that a lot of people know.
Yeah.
And he was a very, very good Premiership footballer and an international player, of course. So will that raise the profile of the team a bit more?
We'd hope so. I mean, that's possibly partly behind their thinking in appointing him. You don't know, but obviously they've seen something. Whether he was interviewed and he impressed, and he's got a good vision. You're absolutely. It's a valid point.
So yeah, like I say, good luck to him. I hope he does really well. Bit of a strange one, but now he's got the job. Let's get behind him. I think.
Just finally, I mean, it's a similar thing to Giggs. He's got into a job now which is it's much higher profile than it was before. Sampson got the job probably. And yeah, there's pressure on him now because it's become more widespread. It's on telly a lot more, which is obviously a good thing. And there's pressure on him to perform straight away. So there's no kind of hiding place for him. So good, good on him for taking it, and let's see how he does.
Yep. Okay, so let's move on to our main section then, which is starting out. Okay, so we're going to be talking about starting off as that grassroots coach, and that initial period when you take up your new team. So first of all, Ben, how did you find those initial few first weeks and months?
So yeah, initially it was I found it quite mind blowing, really. Just in terms of the sheer amount of administration involved, which I probably a bit naively didn't expect, because we've got a club secretary and general manager, and I thought, oh, they'll organise this, they'll organise that. Then it was kind of like just bombardment of emails. You've got to order all your kit. You've got to attend this meeting about this. You've got to attend that meeting about that. You've got to get all your players measured up. You've got to do it by this time. If you get the order wrong, you don't get a refund and all this. I was like, oh my God, But so yeah, initially, I also had to. The thing I found most stressful was I had to make sure every player was signed up to a payment plan for the season. I'd either paid in one go, paid in a couple of instalments, or signed up to another instalment plan we've got. And I'd get a weekly report, and it would tell me at what stage everybody was at, and I had to chase the people who hadn't paid. And until they'd paid, they wouldn't get a ID card. If you haven't got an ID card, you can't play. So that was quite stressful, and chasing parents who were maybe not responding to emails and stuff. So that was an interesting start. And then I found ordering the kit the most stressful thing on the planet, because we were a new team this year, so we needed a home strip and an away strip. And I had to do it myself through a third party that we go to get all of our equipment. So I had to order it straight through them, and I kept reading this email, no refunds and all this, and I was like, oh my God, I can't get this wrong. So we had an introductory evening at the club for all the new teams and players, and they brought out all these boxes of kits, probably like 5 or 6 boxes of different size strips. And of course I had 10 kids and all their parents rifling through all this stuff, shouting out, oh, my son wants this size, Ben, make sure you get this size for him, this size for that. And I was like, oh, just hold on. So luckily I used my son as a bit of a guinea pig. So I was trying all these strips out, thinking, well, yeah, you're this size, that should do for you. Then a couple of lads are a bit bigger, so I'll get them that size. And then I had to get the club to approve it and pay for it because we're a new team. They agreed to pay for the new strips.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we'd have to pay for that ourselves or get sponsorship to pay for it.
Yeah.
So I thought it was all going hunky dory. After a couple of weeks, I hadn't heard anything. And I sort of just emailed the club chairman, owner, just to check how it was going. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I can't approve it yet. You've ordered 2 goalkeeper kits. You only need 1." I was like, "Oh my god!" So I had to phone and cancel and amend the order, and then eventually he approved it. And I think with a week before the first game, we finally got the kits. So I was thinking we wouldn't even have a strip for the first game, and then just dishing those out to everybody was interesting because people were pulling out the wrong sizes, saying, "Oh, the mine doesn't fit. It's too big, too small." And eventually we got there. So yeah. So initially, I found it quite hard work, but after that initial admin period was out of the way, it was then focusing on the football,
Mm-hmm.
taking that forward. Probably different for you, I guess, because you've come in a bit later. So I'm guessing that was already sorted out. Is it similar at your club? Do you have to do that yourself, or have you got I don't know, an admin person who does that, or how does it work?
So I guess hearing you talk there, I guess I'm quite lucky. So we're both starting off from slightly different places, aren't we? And actually, we're
Yeah.
probably my starting point is more focused on the coaching,
Yep.
whereas your focus there had to be as the manager or manager, coordinator, administrator, basically everything. So I mean, all of that stuff, quite honestly, because I'm effectively the assistant coach. The head coach kind of looks after all the management stuff. So I'm pretty lucky from that perspective. Don't have to have all those administrative headaches. So did you get all the kits right? Did anyone?
I mean, a couple are a bit too big, but then they said you want to order for 2 years, so order like they're going to be wearing it for 2 years. So I've erred on the side of being a bit bigger than smaller. So
Mm-hmm.
when they tuck the shirts in, they look all right.
Yeah. Yeah, my son's the same. He'll probably sort him probably more than 2 years. Probably,
Yeah,
probably sort him
absolutely.
out for a while longer than that as well. So I think is there anything else? I guess in terms of just surprises on the managerial side.
Um, Not so much because a friend of mine manages an under-8s there, which I think I mentioned last week. So I had a bit of an idea, but I was surprised how much I was just kind of left to get on with it myself without. There were people I could go to for guidance, but it was kind of I had to ask a lot of questions and find out for myself, which is fine. It's probably a good way to learn the ropes. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, probably other than the initial admin, I would not really, and then just getting the password for the website and then having to arrange with the other managers what time to meet, where the pitch is, all this, that, and the other. So, but
Mm-hmm.
once you get in the routine of it, it's fine, and it's the admin side of it becomes very minimal
Yeah.
after that. It's just making sure you know where you're playing, make sure you contact the manager. The rules with our league is you've got to give 5 days advance notice to your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you can almost forget to do that occasionally, but it's quite well tuned now. So from an admin perspective, before going on into the coaching, debate, yeah, it's fine. And next year, get new players and have to order some new kit.
Sorry, could you say that last sentence again? That just
Yeah.
Skype just cut out.
So yeah, and in terms of admin, it's pretty straightforward now. And when we do it again in the summer, it'll be less people to worry about in terms of buying new kits and stuff. And I kind of now I know what to expect. It'll be pretty straightforward. So no
Yeah.
real worries on that front now.
Yeah. No, I think for the kit sizings, the club where I'm at is really quite organised. They have there's lots and lots of teams as well, so you just have a spot in the schedule, and you get the kids coming in, and they get sized up, and they've got a little tracker sheet there to note down everyone's sizes and everything. So yeah, quite lucky on that front. but it's good to know what your experience is as well. What
Yeah, it's interesting.
what about on the coaching side? So focusing in on those first few weeks or first few sessions and weeks.
Well, I guess probably similar to how you found it, getting involved initially, very nervous, kind of not panicking, but am I doing the right thing? Am I the right person to try and take these kids and develop them and all this sort of stuff? So initially, I mean, we've got a 3G pitch at our club, and we get allocated a training slot, and they
Hmm.
divide the pitch into six. So you get a quite nice big area of the pitch to train on. So before that started, I did a few sessions at the park, local park, just to get to know the kids and the parents, because probably half of the team I didn't know, because
Hmm.
there was the half, like I said last week, that I knew already and bought in, and there were players that I picked up and inherited that I didn't really know. So it was important to try and get everybody together as early as possible, which we did, and we had a couple of initial friendlies while at the club. Um, so yeah, I kind of had a few things that I used to do at my little league team in terms of training routines, nothing too technical or taxing, but just simple, mainly possession stuff, that kind of thing, just to get them used to the ball and used to each other and keeping the ball. Um, and then we did that for a couple of weeks. And then I remember the first session we had at the club, I felt really self-conscious and really, I kind of fretted about it. And I think I had the day off work, so I got to the club sort of like 45 minutes early, ridiculously early, and was sort of pottering around, just trying to think, oh, what am I going to do? I'd worked out what to do as a routine and what I was my plan for the sort of session. But at the start of the season, it was quite warm, so of course all the parents used to stay and watch training. Then they don't now; they kind of just drop their kids off and disappear for a cup of tea or whatever. But they were all stood there watching, and I felt so self-conscious and just thinking, oh, everybody else training as well is looking at me. And of course, they're not. They're not remotely interested in what you're doing. Um, so yeah, I did feel I was sort of questioning myself. Are my routines going to be interesting? Are they good enough? Are people going to be judging what I'm doing?
Hmm.
But you've just got to get over that. And the sessions were good, and the kids seemed to enjoy it. And I just relaxed after that. Really, after I got the first couple out of the way, I don't even think too much about it. And you do keep half an eye on what other people are doing as well, because they're all on the same pitch. And it's similar stuff, some of it, to what I do. And I speak to other parents who I know there who've got kids in other teams, and they say, yeah, you're doing all right. You're doing what X does or B does in their
Hmm.
seconds. You're not doing anything. Don't worry about what you're doing. You're doing stuff that we see other coaches doing, which is good to know. And I think you've got to remember as well, they're 10-year-old kids. They're not professional players. So it's got to be not overcomplicated, but at the same time, it's got to be challenging. And that's what I try and do with the routines that I do. And some of them are repetitive and some of them are not. And I try and mix it up every week. But yeah, initially very apprehensive, as I'm pretty sure you were.
Yeah, so I have what I'd really like to say I did, but I'm going to be pretty honest about what I did. So I mean, we're obviously we're volunteers. We're doing this because we enjoy it, get a lot of enjoyment out of it. But I think you should still approach it as if it was your profession. That's my mindset. Is it doesn't matter. So you should treat it as if it's your job as well. And so if I'm going into a new job or whatever, I'm very focused on those first few weeks, and I'm thinking about ahead of time about what is it I want to get done in those first few weeks, because that's when people form those early opinions and perspectives and perceptions around you as a person, and in this case a coach. So there was probably a couple of months in between knowing I was going to go ahead and do it. I had to get on the courses that we spoke about last week. They're very popular, so it took a little bit of time before I could go through and do those. I'd gone through and done those, got all the qualifications and what have you. I'd been using that time to do a lot of casual YouTubing. So looking around at lots of kind of drills and what people were doing. So I think I started off just looking for any football drills, regardless of age group. I wasn't filtering at all there, and then I kind of refined it down to look at under 10s, under 9s kind of drills and what they do there. So I had this mental library in my mind of all of these football drills, and I kind of I'd see one and I think, oh yeah, that worked really well. I'd make a mental note of it, but I didn't write these down or save them into a list or anything. And the best way I can describe it is, when they brought in the charge for the plastic bags. Was it 4p or 5p now? I can't remember.
Yeah.
So initially, there's that repulsion from society. It's like, I'm not paying for these things. I got them for free for years. I'm not paying for them. So they try and carry 10 or more objects out, loading up their pockets and balancing it to try and get out of whichever supermarket it is. So when I rocked up to that first training session, mentally, that's how I felt. I felt like I was balancing all these football drills in my mind and sort of ready to discuss them with the head coach and about what we could do. And I was turning up preparing to learn, preparing to. Well, I'm going to see. I've got this other chap. He's going to show me the ropes. He's going to teach me how to do all this stuff, and I'll help out and maybe talk to the kids one-to-one and give them a few pointers and stuff like that. And the first question. So the girls were already kind of turning up. We're doing a bit of a warm-up, and then head coach just says, "So, what we're going to do today then?" And my balanced, hundreds of YouTube drills and everything just all fell on the floor. I was kind of like, wasn't expecting that. I don't know, what do you think we should work on? And then I think he was playing with me a little bit. He did have in mind what he wanted to work on.
Yeah.
But I think if I'd have gone back, if I could replay that, go back in time, as they say, the mistake that I made, well, firstly, what I know now is, looking at hundreds of YouTube drills really isn't going to help you. There's loads of fantastic drills on there, but it has to be part of an overarching plan on what is it you're trying to do.
Yep, absolutely.
The other thing is, I didn't talk enough beforehand to the head coach about, because we're that team. So, any new team, you need to first figure out, okay, how are we going to work together? What are we going to focus on? This is how it's going to work effectively. And something in my professional life I talk a lot about. There's one of my favourite quotes is actually an Eisenhower quote, and I can never remember the actual words. I usually just paraphrase it, but he sort of says that plans themselves are useless, but planning is everything.
Yeah,
and that is the missing piece that I didn't honestly do, that I really should have done beforehand. Now, there was no kind of spilt milk or anything. Like, say, the head coach kind of already had a plan in mind, and so we went through that. But after the session, I felt, I'd sort of let myself down a bit, that I didn't take the opportunity to have those discussions and turn up ready to go with, whatever we were going to work on that day, with a view to what the overarching plan was. So that was my main lesson learned, I think, from those first. Well, actually, the very first session there.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah, because I mean, initially I was doing it on my own, so I have now got an assistant. So I didn't have anybody to kind of bounce off in the early days, and part of my thinking was, even if I am worrying about what I'm going to be doing. Do I think it's good enough? What are the parents going to think? I thought I've got to at least be authoritative and look like I know what I'm doing in the way that I interact with the kids, and not letting them run riot. And so I've always been very of that mindset. Right, guys, this is what we're doing. Right, that not showing any fears through the way I interact with them, if that makes sense. And it's probably the same in any job, anything you do. You're trying to impress people to a point, and you're trying to show that you know what you're doing. And it's got easier, and I do enjoy it. And I think it helped the fact that I knew some of the parents already, and they obviously were happy for their kids to come and play in the team, and they knew a bit about me already. So it was just trying to sort of prove to those other parents, myself, that they're in good hands. Hopefully I can progress them. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't really, even now, I still feel that way. Most weeks, I think, because I want training to be, first of all, I want them to enjoy it. That's really important to me, and I want them to have a good team spirit, and I think we've got that. And it's important to me as well. It sounds weird that when they're messing around and larking about and it's driving me mad, I also enjoy that, because it shows they've got a good bond, and they can be like that with each other, rather than they're all stood about in cliques not interacting. So I do quite enjoy that, as much as it drives me crazy at times. So it's always that balance between the trait. It's got to be fun. It's also got to be serious, and they've got to get something out of it. But like you said, there's got to be a structure. So what are we? It's all very well, and there are some amazing routines out there, and I've got a lot of my ideas from, like you, just like you, YouTubing stuff. But it's got to be relevant to the whole theme of training. Are we going to work on possession? Are we going to work on our shape? Are we going to work on tackling? Are we going to work on body shape? Are we going to, so you can't just do, my personal feelings, you can't just do random willy-nilly routines. They've all got to be linked somehow, and that's kind of what I try and do in my training sessions. And I've found it easier as we've gone on, because you start to, as you probably find as well, you focus on the bits that you think aren't so good, and you do routines based around improving those skills, but also still keep dipping your toe and keeping your hand in the bits that they do well, so they don't forget, especially if you don't have a game for a couple of weeks. But whether you can get back into bad habits, it's always reinforcing the things they do well, and it's always a balancing act. And the good thing is, there's so many routines out there, and I get ideas from my own routines from looking at other ones, and I put my own twist on it, or try to. And yeah, there's every week is different, because there's so many different things you can try and work on. And just this week we tried some new stuff, and it was great. The kids at the end said, "Oh, are we going to do that again?" I really enjoyed it, and that was amazing to hear that, because you never know sometimes, because you sometimes say to the guys, "Oh, how'd you find it?" And you get a sort of shrug of the shoulders or whatever. But yeah, a few of them said, "Oh, can we do that again? We really enjoyed it," and that was great. It was really good. So yeah, it's always a challenge, but as you probably, you must find it a bit easier now as well. Now you've got your feet under the table. And what's the dynamic in your training? It's interesting, because I've got an assistant, but I kind of take training, and he helps, putting the cones out, like you said before, and encouraging the kids and that sort of thing. But I lead training. Is that how it works for you guys, or?
So for the last few months, so we were the pioneers, if you like. We were the first girls team in the club, but we're very keen to start up other teams as well. So for the last few months, we've had a few younger girls down, and so the coach has generally gone to work with them, and left me to work with our team. So working through whatever we've discussed. So in mind with what I talked about before, and where I think I dropped the ball a bit, I did some soul searching after that, and after a little while, again, I think we'll go into coach planning in another podcast in a bit more detail. But essentially, what I have now, I've got a plan for every week on what we're going to work on up until May. Now, all plans can change, but if I want to know what are we working on any given week, I can just go into my little Excel spreadsheet, and I say, all right, we're going to work on this particular drill, and usually it's in 4 to 6 week blocks, that we're going to work on, say, ball control or the defensive side of the game or attacking and what have you. So that's generally what how I execute now. So it's a lot easier now that I can be so forward looking. I don't have to come with my YouTube drills and think, right, what should we work on today? We didn't do this particularly well in the last game. Let's work on that particular piece, and be very reactive to it.
Absolutely. I think, you learn as you go along. I think also what I've found has helped me is I always ask the kids. I'm coaching them, but I'm also saying, right, what did we do wrong there? What are the things we've got to take into this game? What do you think we could do better or at half time? What haven't we done very well in that game? Rather than just, I don't want to be like rat-a-tat at them all the time. I want to get their buy-in and their view, and they're good at that. They're good at, they'll tell me, yeah, I think we should do this, I think we should do that. And that's really important as well, having that two-way dialogue. And initially that was a bit difficult because some of them was just fitting in to know the others and that sort of thing. So I was always trying to get their perspective and their feedback on what they think. It's not just about what I think and me telling them what to do. I want them to learn and question me and answer the questions themselves. What did you do wrong there? Or I'll stop the game. Right, what should have happened there? And they're getting really good at that and feeding back, and it's good. And I feel that they sort of trust me in that respect, and they're quite comfortable feeding that information back. So that's really important to me as well, and I think that's really helped cement the team spirit that we've got, which is really important to me as well. So yeah, it's a gradual progression, but you're always learning. And my big hope going forward is that they want to stay together and we can take it into next year, because you never know, some of them might have other interests, they might not want to do it next year and all this. So yeah, it's interesting to get their side of it as well. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant point about the questioning. So that's something I try and do, and that was just not plagiarize, whatever the word is, where you just copy. You see what someone else is doing, you think, that's quite a good idea. So generally, all of the training sessions we start off with, we just start with a few questions. So how did you think the last game went? What about the other team? What did they do well? What did we do well? What do we think we could do a bit better?
Yep.
And you get a bit more interaction, a bit more engagement than if I was to just stand there and say, well, this is what we did well, this is what we didn't do well. People would be looking off into the clouds or at the shoes and whatever, and not really learning. So yeah, I think teaching them through asking questions is a really great way to learn.
Yeah, because if you stood there for five, happened this morning. I was doing a pre-match team talk, and 2 or 3 of them were looking over my shoulder at a game going on behind me, and you're kind of like, the attention span's not always going to be there. So I do find by asking them questions and getting them to speak back, it does hold their attention a lot more, and they seem a bit more focused on what you're saying. Then that's what I find just with the boys. I don't know what the girls are like in terms of paying attention and listening. What are they quite attentive, or are they? I mean, the boys can be a nightmare, I find, because they just get very easily distracted. But whether the girls are as well, I'd be interested to get your perspective on that, because I've always wondered.
Yeah.
Because my daughter's team very focused. I've seen my daughter's manager talk to her, and they're all, you can hear a pin drop.
Really?
But, yeah. Maybe it's the way he is with them. I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting. The boys are they're quite a handful to just get to pay attention. Luckily, they're focused when the game starts. But how do you find that with the girls?
So, I mean, first and foremost, you're dealing with under 10s, aren't you? So, whether it's girls or boys.
You do have to tell yourself that, absolutely, yeah.
And I think if, again, now I turn up with a rock solid plan in my mind, and if I've had a busy week at work and not been able to mentally prepare, well, I've still got that plan ahead of time that I can just go through and make sure, right, say when we turn up, this is what we're going to do, and I follow pretty much the same formula, like say talking about the questions. We'll go through a warm up, we'll go through typically some kind of unopposed technique kind of drill.
Yep.
Then add some opposition, a bit of resistance into that drill. And then we'll generally have a small-sided game. So when you've got that structure, you know exactly how it's going to flow, where in the allotted time you need to be at any particular point. That helps to go in there. I think if you're just go in there without really thinking about what is it we're going to do, and the girls are turning up, one at a time, and then they're sort of talking about stuff and running around chasing each other, messing about and stuff, then you get eaten alive, I think. So it is about getting on the front foot. It's about a tone of voice as well, having that authority in your voice. And just taking tips from how teachers do it. It used to amaze me when I'd go and see you go and see your kids at plays and stuff, and it's amazing how the teachers put on a nativity or something like that, and you just think, how mine don't behave like that at home, so but it is about all these tricks on how to get them to behave, and not so much how to get them to behave actually, because I think I'm still searching for that one, but keep them focused on something, and trying to get to enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a key point. I think it's strange when the game starts that they're incredibly focused, but it's just sometimes you think, are they listening? Are they paying attention? And I think they probably are, to be fair, because they do take. I've seen a lot of improvement, and what we've worked on, I can see them improving and getting better at that, and it's a great buzz, and it's very satisfying to see that. But you're right, tone of voice. It's interesting. We had a Christmas party not long ago, and we were chatting with the parents. They were, how do you think it's going? I said, yeah, great. I think the kids are doing really well. And they said, yeah, we're loving it. They're really enjoying it, and it's great to hear that. And I said, sometimes I think I'm a bit harsh with them. And all the parents pretty much said, I don't think you're hard enough with them. I was like, really? It really surprised me, because in my mind, I can be quite not strict, but when they're messing around and not listening, I'm very, very firm with them. I think, maybe I've gone a bit, and even in games, I think, I've gone a bit too far there. But the parents are like, no, I don't. We think sometimes you could probably be a bit harder on them. I'm like, wow, that really surprised me. It really surprised me, because it's interesting. Your perception of how you are with them is completely different to the outside, and I guess because you get so caught up in that world of being a coach, you can't sort of step outside of yourself. And it'd be interesting to if somebody videoed a coaching session that I did, and I could watch it back, or how I behave on the touchline. I'd be fascinated to see that, and just to see how I would critique myself, if that makes sense. It'd be very interesting for me, and I'd probably learn a lot from it, because obviously my perception of how I am with the kids is different to the parents, which I found quite interesting. So yeah, maybe you could try that to see what feedback you get.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I think I subscribe to
end of season post-mortem or something like that.
Yeah, I think I subscribe to if it was particularly bad, I'd certainly know about it. In terms of getting told. But yeah, I think I'm quite envious of people who don't ever question themselves. The sort of people who just have an unshakable confidence in whatever it is they're doing, and so sleep safely at night and just get on with it. But I do think it is healthy to just constantly critique yourself and
Yeah.
just think, right, this is how I handle this situation. Could I have handled that better? Again, the coaches are the same as the players. We're going to make mistakes, and there's going to be things that we'll look back on and think, right, well, if that had happened now, I'll handle that a bit differently. But yeah, no, it's a good point. I'll have to make a point of that of doing a lessons learned with all the parents at the end of the season.
Yeah, unless it's really bad, then you can cut it off and say, let's forget it.
Yeah, 2 minutes in, you're getting dogs abuse. It's like, right, well, thanks for joining. See you next year.
Yeah, and what I was going to say before as well, when I started this season, because we were the new team, we got 4 other under 10s teams apart from ours, and I felt a bit kind of not unworthy, but I felt a bit like the new kid in school, and I was kind of thinking, all these other coaches thinking, where is this guy turning up with his new team? Who does he think he is? And it was only when I got to know a few of the coaches that they're good guys, and I do feel part of it now. But even that's why it's important for me to do my badges, because then I'll probably feel more like I should be there. Whereas now I feel like I'm still on trial to a point, I think, because people could turn around and say, well, you haven't got your badges. What do you know about being a coach? Which would be fair comment. But I also think on the flip side of that, I think the team, because we're doing really well this season, I think the team is kind of speaking for itself as well. And it makes me feel more, because we're doing well, it makes me feel more confident that I should be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why it's important, and we'll touch on it in future episodes. But doing the badges is a big thing for me, because I think it will just make me feel more confident in myself, if that makes sense. When I'm there with those guys who some of them have got their qualifications already, I'll think, well, yeah, I do belong here, and this is my team, and we're contributing to this club because we're doing well. We've had some great feedback from people around the club, other managers, and stuff like that, and it all helps build up my confidence. But there's still always that part, am I doing well enough? But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think if you're always trying to push yourself and keep learning and don't ever get blasé about it, I think that's really important, and I think that's probably a good thing, just to keep me on my toes. So
yeah, I suspect you're thinking the coaches are thinking about your team a bit more than they are in reality. just listening to the.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, between the kids, if there's the multiple under 10s teams, is there any sort of passing around of any transfers between teams there, or?
No, there's not actually, which is that's an interesting point. No, I think once you're signed up for the season, that's it. The only time players do leave is particularly from I call them the first team. They're probably the best team at the club at our age level. They do have players who go to clubs because they get poached to go to academies and whatever. So they do. I was speaking to one of our under 10s managers the other day from that team, and he said he's lost a couple of players because they've been scouted. And of course, you're going to want to take that opportunity. But in terms of between the teams, no, that doesn't happen actually, which is interesting. Because a few of mine, one of their best friends plays for another team at the club in a higher division than us. And yeah, I mean, I would have him in my team. And I've had that discussion with his dad, because he's thinking about that possibly happening next year. But I don't know how that happens. I don't know the rules and regulations, and if people are happy for me to poach a player from another team so he could play with his mates. He's good enough, and I think he'd be more comfortable maybe playing with all his friends. But it's more about being in the right team and more than about being with your mates, kind of thing, I suppose. But yeah, we'll see. I don't, but no, not that I know of. But in a season, it doesn't happen. People have their squads, and the only time you get a new player is if somebody's scouted and leaves, and you just get a replacement from the waiting list, I suppose. So yeah, no, I've not really seen any of that. So
Okay.
You don't have to worry about that, because you've only got one girls' team.
Yeah, I mean, I quite honestly don't what the other coaches think. I suppose if I stopped to think for more than 20 seconds, you might think, well, because we're the girls' team, are we viewed any differently from the other teams there? But I I don't care what they think, to be honest.
Absolutely, quite right.
Okay, so should we try and sum up there about some of the things we've talked about? So we talked about that initial period, that administration is something to expect when you're just starting out, particularly for a new team. Not so much if it's an established team and you're just coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ordering kits is pretty stressful, so make sure you get your orders right. Probably have a little system, a little spreadsheet, or pen and paper, whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had.
Yeah, and so make sure you get the right sizes, but the kits are going to have to fit them for a couple of years. So don't order too small. I think also we touched a little bit about having a plan, so an approach towards the coaching. What we probably didn't touch on, and we can touch on this in a later podcast, is really part of that planning is ultimately how do you want the team to play? Do you want them to have a direct style? Do you want them to be a possession-based team? Do you want to have them Gangnam pressing? Maybe, but ultimately that philosophy is going to drive what you're putting into your plan. So that'll be an interesting one to discuss in the future.
Yep, definitely.
Is there anything I forgot there?
No, I think that's it, really.
Okay, so let's move on to our next section there, which is our retro review. Okay, so we're going to be talking about Paul Gascoigne. Okay, so Ben, what are your first early memories of the player Paul Gascoigne?
Well, probably like a lot of people my generation, I guess, Italia 90, still probably my favourite World Cup. Absolutely love that World Cup, and I think he was obviously the guy that came back from that as a bit of a national hero. And probably I would guess the first time a lot of people were probably aware of him. I'm probably aware of him, but I can't ever remember watching him in a game, like at club level, and noticing him. Maybe it's because I was too focused on only watching Liverpool or whatever. I don't know, but I don't ever really remember him standing out to me as a sort of hero of mine or anything like that. But Italia 90, I think I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure in the first England game of that World Cup, he didn't actually start.
Mm-hmm.
I seem to remember this because we didn't have a very good result. We drew, I think, or we might even have lost.
Yeah,
with Ireland. That's right, with the Republic of Ireland.
That's right.
And then I think we played Holland, possibly. And
yep.
Oh, look at that memory. Good that you confirmed that. You did your research.
Well, no, I'll get into my perspective in a minute.
Okay.
But it's quite burned on my brain that
right.
one.
But I can remember now the disappointment after that Ireland game because we won the up and they got a late equaliser and it was all doom and gloom like it always is with the England team. But he started against Holland and he absolutely ran the show. It was amazing. And I was like, who's this guy? I just wasn't really aware of him. But I seem to remember I think he did a Cruyff turn, took out a couple of players. And it was fantastic. And there weren't many players. I mean, Chris Waddle was a bit like that as well, who I loved watching.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this kid, he was 23 or something at the time. But yeah, fantastic. And he just had the cojones to do that and try that. And he just played without fear. And what was deceptive about him as well, he was quite a stocky individual, but he had a real acceleration, which probably people wouldn't associate with him or even remember, but he really could, over 10, 15 yards, just surge past a player. And they're my memories of him, just surging past players and causing havoc. Then, of course, the Germany semi-final, the tears and all that. It was kind of heartbreaking at the time, but he carried on, tried to obviously we didn't make it as usual. Say I've got my England hat on. Went to the World Cup because Wales are never in them. But yeah, and after that, probably obviously the semi-final against Arsenal at Wembley, where he scored that unbelievable free kick, 35
Yeah,
yards, top corner, fantastic. And then sadly, I think after that, so it's a very short period that I remember him as being so great. And then because within a space of a year, he'd wrecked his knee, and he was never quite the same again, which was tragic, really. And I think obviously it's well documented all the problems he's had since.
hmm
But I remember that FA Cup final where he did that knee, and I remember reading interviews years later of people like in the tunnel with him or in the same team, Tottenham players and stuff, and they said he was so wound up, and you could see it in the warm up. And I've seen
yeah,
clips since, and he was so hyper. He was always either going to get sent off or do something to himself, or something was going to happen. I remember that watching that cup final, thinking because he was playing on the edge, and I think that was part of his talent, that he did play on the edge, and he would try things other players wouldn't do. But fortunately, it was the wrong playing on the edge. And it's a shame that he had that knee injury, because for that time, and he had that brief sort of resurrection in the Euros with England, and he scored that
hmm
amazing goal against Scotland. But he
yeah,
was never, even then, he wasn't quite the same player. But because he had so much ability, he could kind of get away with it, and he would still be picked, because he could still influence a game. But in terms of natural ability, I mean, there's not many that I've seen since I've been watching football that have been English, that have produced talent like that. I can think of very few. I mean, you think of people like Gerrard, different type of player, but in terms of just that ability to try something unexpected, and the skill level, there's just not been many that I could really think of. And for that, he was just a hell of a player. I mean,
yeah.
I would guess World Cup '90 similar for you when he came on your radar. And
Yeah, so for me, Italia '90 is my World Cup. We spoke last week about really that football switch turning on in '86 for me, and obviously there was a World Cup that year as well, and the whole Maradona quarter final there was there. I was aware of it, and people were talking about England going out to Argentina and whatever, but I wasn't fully invested
no, I
in
wouldn't
that.
either. You're right. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, but when in the build up to the World Cup in Italy in 1990, I was all on board then, and I remember having the England team up on the wall, and still for me that's the best England kit there has been. But again, that's probably my my particular perspective on that, just the age I was and everything. But I remember that, like you say, that first game was really disappointing. I can't remember quite honestly who scored for England, but I do remember obviously Steve McMahon was playing
Yeah,
and sort of miscontrolled it.
that's right. That's right.
Just was it Kevin Sheedy, I think, just
Kevin
and then
Sheedy,
just
yeah.
popped it into the far corner. It's like, oh, come on. But there was a real, the English press are so binary, aren't they? They're either all on board or, you're the worst team that's ever donned the England kit. And I seem to remember there was a real downbeat mood around the team then, because everyone was expecting. This is before Republic of Ireland went on to have a few really good years, didn't they, under
Well, they
Jack
got they got to
Charlton?
the quarterfinals of that World Cup.
Yeah, yeah, but going into it, they were really a surprise package. So that
Yeah.
opening game, I think almost everyone was expecting England to win comfortably, and so going into the second game, playing a very good Dutch side, I think there was a bit of a downbeat, like, oh, here we go, we could go out of the group stages here. And so I remember watching it with a few friends, and I had no idea who Paul Gascoigne was, quite honestly. And as you mentioned before, he ran the show, and that Cruyff turn, I still remember it now.
I do. I can see it in my mind's eye as you talk about it.
Yeah,
I can remember the way he just took those different. It was amazing.
because I'd never seen an England player do anything like that. He just took two Dutch defenders completely out of the game, And it's one of you watch it on the replay and you're like, how did that happen? you know,
Yeah,
and we've been used to very different sort of central midfielders, haven't we? We still had great central midfielders in '86. People like obviously Brian Robson, Peter Reid, players like that, but more about controlling the game. Good tackling, bursting forward, and stuff like that. But his skill on the ball, and like you say, that initial burst of acceleration, he was just like a player I'd never seen before. Certainly not playing for England.
yeah. Probably the closest I remember, I think, to seeing that again was probably Wayne Rooney when he was 16, 17, and I thought, wow. Remember when he played Turkey and he made his debut and he was unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah,
But never really quite panned out that way. But yeah, there's not many, like I said before, that I can think of who had that. Just unbelievable ability, absolutely natural,
yeah.
God-given talent that was.
I was honestly racking my brains to try and think, who would be, who would I say he was like now, and I no, don't hang up on me. The only person I could really think, and he's nowhere near the class, and he's certainly not lived up to his potential, but actually Ross Barkley. When I saw him first burst
Yeah.
into the Everton side, I
Well, he was
thought,
in my mind just now. Yeah,
yeah, he's
absolutely.
got that kind of that close control, that skill, that burst of pace. He can score goals. Actually, this guy could be a new sort of in that Gascoigne mould. But I mean, we'll see how he does at Chelsea, obviously. But he's not really lived up to that potential. But that's the only player I could think of. There's been lots of players influenced by Gascoigne. Like you
Yeah,
said, Wayne Rooney's talked a lot about him. Steven Gerrard used to play in the streets, pretending he was Paul Gascoigne. But in terms of actual playing style, I can't think of anyone closer, like I say, than Ross Barkley looked like he could have been in those early days.
yeah. No, I mean, and he's probably a similar age. I think he's probably the same age now as Gazza was when he had that World Cup. So you never know. There's
Mm-hmm.
still, if he stays fit, he's at a new club, new challenge, hopefully, because he has got a lot of talent, and he did pop into my mind when I thought about who is like that, or who have I seen since Gascoigne, and him and Rooney, the only two that really stick in my mind at the moment. Hopefully there'll be more to come, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
almost a once in a lifetime thing for
yeah.
somebody that talented. So
I can really recommend the. I don't know if you've seen it. The documentary on Netflix. I think it's just called Gazza, and it's been up there fairly recently. It's a really good watch, and it's
I'll
obviously
check that out. I haven't actually seen that, but I've seen retro documentaries on World Cup '90 from an England perspective, and obviously there's a lot about Gazza in those. But yeah, I've not
mhm.
seen that. I've not seen that particular one, but I will check that out.
I think is it One Night in Turin
Yeah,
is
that's it. And
one
I'll,
of
and I'll
them.
probably say to the younger generation who've never seen him play, check it out as well, because what a player! What a player!
Yeah, it's. Actually, I'll come back to that National Museum quote in a sec, but I think for me, again, the things that made him distinctive: running with the ball, dribbling, that close control, that skill, but also he was strong as an ox. Because any skillful players typically, the the less skilled are trying to muscle them off the ball and trying to win that physical battle.
Yeah,
But he could really mix it up, and you can see him. He's in some of the old footage. He's pretty much handing people off
yeah,
while he's
he was good
wriggling
at that
through.
as
He's
well.
able to hand people off while he's keeping the ball close and dribbling it right through there.
But he was so good at that as well. Yeah, once he got going, you couldn't stop him.
Yep. And so I think the thing I mentioned there about that National Museum quote, so the most naturally gifted English midfielder of his generation. And when I read that, and so when we spoke about, we'd speak about Gazza, I did read up on him again a little bit and saw that quote, and it actually jarred with me a little bit. because I'm not sure, other than the passion, the desire to play football and excel at it. I just don't know what is natural about what Gascoigne had. He was, like you say, he was about 23 in Italia 90. He'd have spent the best part of 20 years, every bit of spare time he had with a football, a tennis ball, a can probably down the street, practicing. And you wouldn't have thought of it as practicing, but he would have been kicking something around and honing that ability and getting better and better. And so I thought it was a little bit disrespectful to just write it off as a natural gift. I don't know what do you think about that?
Yeah, I do think people do have that in them, but I think also it's hard work as well. And like you said, having such an enthusiasm for the game, which I think he had, and you just always have a ball, tennis ball, ping pong ball, football, whatever ball it is, you're kicking a ball. My lad puts his socks together in a bunch and kicks them around the house. He always has to be kicking something, but yeah, and it's almost like you're doing it without thinking. And you're walking down the street, like you said, you're walking to school, you've got a ball, you're kicking it against a wall on the way to school. And we've all done that to a point, I'm sure. But yeah, somebody who just lived and breathed football. And I think you do have to have an element of luck, hard work, but also I do believe that people do have a bit of that ability, but you can't just make it by having ability and not working hard. And I'm sure, despite all the extracurricular activities he got up to, I'm sure he did work hard because he loved the game, and you could see that the void in his life when he didn't have football anymore, which has probably led to a lot of his problems. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I think there is an element of hard work that goes hand in hand with that. Otherwise, you'll never make it to the top. It's too difficult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, is there anything else you want to touch on with Gascoigne? We spoke about Italian 90 and I mean that FA Cup run that they had. I still watch him line up that free kick against Arsenal, and every time I see him running towards the ball, I think you're too far out there. What are you doing shooting from there?
I think even a commentator it was something like, is he gonna try one? It is, or something like that, and then it flies, and you're kind of like, even the commentator thought, no, you're too far out, sunshine. You're never going to put that in.
Yeah, and I think if I don't know if brutal is the right word, maybe a bit harsh, but in my opinion, that kind of 90, 91, 92 time before he did his knee, and I think those were his peak years. He obviously had a good career, played in Italy, won lots of stuff up with Rangers in Scotland, but never quite for me recaptured just that unbelievable skill that he had and the impact on the games that he had. And if I brought it up before, this is possibly a bit of an unintentional theme, but lack of caps compared to ability seems to be a bit of a theme. Yep. So 57 England caps he got in the end, and I think a lot of that will be to do with his injuries, but it still seems shockingly low.
It does. I actually knew it was 57, which is amazing. It's about the only one I do know. But yeah, it's rubbish, isn't it? Really. But he joins the list of players who should have got more caps and didn't for whatever reason. And he did suffer pretty cruel luck with injuries, and he probably got that knee injury back when the surgery and modern medicine, probably nowadays it's such a common thing, and it's almost like, oh well, he's done his cruciate ligament, he'll be back playing, no problem. But maybe back then it wasn't quite the same, or maybe his body just couldn't handle it, I don't know. But it was a real shame, because you're right, he wasn't the same player, but still a hell of a player after that, because of that ability. But yeah, it was a real shame for him.
Yeah, and it's almost pointless speculating, but before he did his knee, and like you say, I'm sure in the Netflix documentary they talk a little bit about that hyper state that he was in before the final. You know, he just wanted to win so badly.
Yeah.
But I remember he planted his foot right in the middle of one of the Forest players' chests. You know, again, just being a bit overzealous and
which would have been a red card nowadays. He
So
would have been sent straight off.
If they'd have sent him off, then he doesn't do his knee, and we're having a whole different conversation. But you know, it's just one of those things. But yeah, he's obviously in the last few weeks seems to be quite active on Twitter actually. So
yeah, he's posting a few jokes.
Well.
And it's good to see. I hope he carries that on and doesn't. It's not the bad stuff we read about him. So yeah, it's good to see that actually. It did make me chuckle.
Yeah, it seems him and Tim Vine should get together because they're right in there with the puns.
Yeah, he loves the puns, as Tim Vine.
He does. So okay, so let's move on to a slightly newer section, which we're going to call Stump the Grasshopper. Okay, so we've spoken quite a bit about the impact that Italia 90 had on us, and obviously that was a shining light for Paul Gascoigne. What's interesting, that is obviously quite a while ago now, is that we've got quite a few professional footballers in the game born in 1990. So what I'm going to do, Ben, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you three options. It's either A, B or C, and I'm going to give you three players, and one of them is born in 1990. So I've got five questions for you, and we'll see how you do. Okay, so born in 1990. A, Antoine Griezmann. B, Tony Cruz. C, Theo Walcott. And I will know if you're Googling.
I know who it's not. I know it's not Theo Walcott. I think it is Tony Cruz.
You're right. Spot on. Okay, next one is a bit of a Liverpool theme here. So we've got A, Nathaniel Klein. B, Mario Balotelli. C, Daniel Sturridge.
Well, again, I know it's not Sturridge, so I think it's probably that Klein.
But sorry, Skype tweaked out a bit there. Was that Klein?
Yeah, Nathaniel Klein.
Nope. Balotelli.
That's it.
So Nathaniel Klein was born in 91.
I'm quite good on my birthdays.
Well, we'll tot up the scores and see at the end there. So third one, so Kevin De Bruyne, Tom Cleverley, David De Gea.
Cleverley.
Nope, David De Gea.
Oh, no.
Cleverley was 89. Okay, so question number 4. We've got A, Victor Moses, B, N'Golo Kante, C, Andy Carroll. Bit of a Chelsea theme there. I thought I'd be a little bit cheeky there with the Carroll link.
Victor Moses.
Yep, spot on.
B.
Okay, so Carroll's another one that was 89. And let's all hope that Chelsea move goes through. Question 5. We've got A, Gareth Bale, B, Eden Hazard, C, Aaron Ramsey.
Oh, I know it's not Bale. It's one of the other two. I think it's Ramsey.
Yep, spot on. So you got 3 out of 5 there. So well done. Genuinely, if I wasn't putting the questions together, I don't think I'd be completely guessing out of all of those, quite honestly.
Well, it'll be my turn next week to do the same for you, and we'll keep a little score going.
Yep, sounds good.
Week.
All right, I should save this little spreadsheet then.
Yeah, keep it, mate.
So let's wrap up there. You've been listening to the Grassroots Coachcast. You can subscribe to us on iTunes and Stitcher, and it'd be great if you could leave us one of those 5-star reviews or a Go Lazzo. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Luca Barbieri, who's going to play us out with the theme to the 1990 World Cup. You can find his YouTube channel in the show notes. Cheers, Ben.
Yeah, cheers, Dave. Enjoyable, and look forward to next week.